Number 9. Foxwolf 190. In recent years, this photo of a crashed World War II-era Foxwolf 190 fighter jet has circulated online. Nobody seems to know where or when the picture was taken, or the actual story behind the crash. According to one Redditor, the photo was taken somewhere in France in 1944, but the user admitted that the details about the image were sketchy. Regardless of the specifics, it wasn't the first or only Foxwolf 190 wreck to be discovered in the woods. In 1991, an outdoorsman came across one of the downed aircraft while hunting in a Soviet forest. He notified the authorities, and after doing some digging, officials concluded that the German-made aircraft crashed in 1943 after taking off from a nearby airport. The pilot, Major Paul Rattle, was heading toward the front lines, just a 15-minute flight away, when the plane was attacked by Soviet anti-aircraft artillery. Its fuel supply system was completely destroyed. Major Rattle tried to fly back to the airport, but he crash-landed in the woods and was captured by the Soviet army. He remained a prisoner until 1949, 5 years after the war ended. By the time the downed aircraft was found in 1991, its machine gun had been removed. This may have been done as part of a failed effort by the German military to recover the plane. Shortly after its rediscovery, the fighter jet was removed and taken to a nearby Soviet military base. At the time, the USSR was under immense economic strain and was just months away from collapsing. Lacking the resources to do anything with the plane, the government sold it to the British Aviation Collection. It was eventually restored, and in 2010, the aircraft finally flew again for the first time in 67 years. Number 8. Double Devastation. On November 14, 1970, the Marshall University Thundering Herd football team and coaching staff boarded a chartered DC-9 and headed back to West Virginia from North Carolina. The team had just lost their football game to East Carolina University. Tragically, the plane crashed in a wooded area while trying to land at Tri-State Airport in Canova, killing all 75 players, boosters, and staff members aboard. Just a day later, the wreckage was plowed away by bulldozers. The crash and its harrowing aftermath were depicted in the 2006 movie We Are Marshall. While the plane itself is no longer there, the site is marked by a plaque memorializing the lives lost. The Marshall crash came on the heels of an eerily similar tragedy that happened just a month earlier in Silver Plume, Colorado. 2 Martin 404 airplanes departed from Kansas with Wichita State University football players, boosters, and coaches for a game in Utah, with no plans to refuel in Denver. Sadly, one of the planes crashed into a mountain in the Arapahoe National Forest because it was overweight and the pilot was unable to pull it out of a canyon after opting to take the scenic route. 29 of the 40 people aboard died at the scene, and 2 perished later on. Like the Marshall wreck, there's a memorial plaque near the crash site. Number 7. Retired Olympic Airways 727 jet. In the forest of rural Hillsboro, Oregon, there's a Boeing 77 jet that once flew for the Greek airline Olympic Airways. At first glance, it looks like it was parked there and abandoned for some unknown reason. The aircraft's exterior is noticeably old and worn out, as if it was left at the mercy of nature and forgotten about. But it's actually the home of a retired engineer named Bruce Campbell, who paid $100,000 for the plane in 1999 after it was retired from commercial service. He paid another $120,000 to have it flown from Athens, Greece to Portland. Then he removed the wings and had the fuselage towed to an abandoned walnut orchard on a 10-acre property that he purchased for $23,000. Campbell reattached the wings and proceeded to turn the 727 into his permanent living quarters. He uses the rear staircase as the main entrance, and he never split the interior up into separate rooms, but he did remove some of the seats to make space for his own furniture and belongings. The engines are also gone, but the aircraft sits along a major fault line, so he left the landing gear in place to protect it in the event of an earthquake. Speaking with Bottom Line blogger Bill Briggs, Campbell explained that airplanes function as flying homes, but they can serve the same purpose just fine on the ground. They're equipped with everything a person needs as far as modern conveniences like lighting, plumbing, and climate control go. He saw no reason to create separate rooms or make any other major changes to the interior. In fact, Campbell believes that retired aircraft could be repurposed as affordable housing, despite the pretty penny he paid to set up his 727 as a home. He spends half of the year living in the aircraft in Oregon and the other half in Japan, where tsunamis, earthquakes, and other natural disasters have made thousands of people homeless on a moment's notice at various points throughout history. Speaking to Oregon Live, the eccentric engineer pointed out that 3 commercial aircraft are retired daily on average, and he wondered out loud why they end up being scrapped or abandoned when they could easily function as someone's home. Would you live on a retired aircraft? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6. BAC-111. Designed during the early 1960s, the British Aircraft Corporation 111 was a solid model that remained in use among major airlines into the 1990s, but it's no longer considered airworthy in most countries, and the last flyable one was taken out of service in 2019, which means that your chances of stumbling upon one are slim unless you happen to be exploring the forest northwest of Chicago. If you look hard enough, you may find an old BAC-111 sitting in these woods. Featuring 3 distinctive reddish-orange lines along its fuselage, the small white jet was built in 1965. It flew for Pacific Airlines starting in 1977 and was put into storage in 1998 under the ownership of Rotec Industries. A YouTuber who shared footage of the plane declined to reveal its exact location, most likely to protect it from vandalism. Local radio station 100.9 The Eagle speculated that the wreck is in Gilbert's or Elmhurst, Illinois. The aircraft looks as though its wings were cut off to simplify its journey into the woods, suggesting that it may have been put there on purpose, but the story behind why and how it ended up there is a mystery. Number 5. P4YSA. Tucked away in the jungle on the Dutch Caribbean island of Curaçao is a weathered and overgrown plane reminiscent of a scene from Indiana Jones or the TV series Lost. The aircraft has clearly been there for a number of years, but nobody seems to know exactly how it got there. It was identified as a twin turboprop built by the Japanese manufacturer Nihon Aircraft, which flew under Aruba Airlines as Flight P4YSA. There are no known records of the plane's most recent owner or what happened to it after it came to a rest at the remote site. It's also unclear whether the aircraft wrecked or if someone parked it there on purpose. The plane's wings, seats, and turboprops have been removed. At one point, there was reportedly plans to turn it into a restaurant, but this never happened. P4YSA was one of 2 of its particular model that Aruba Airlines bought in 1986, with the other being classified as Flight P4YSB. While Flight YSA ended up in the Caribbean jungle for unknown reasons, YSB's fate is much more traceable. It was submerged as an artificial reef off the Aruban coast after being irreparably damaged during Hurricane Lenny in 1999 and remains there to this day. The plane sits 40 feet beneath the waves off the coast of Aruba and isn't too far from its twin, despite meeting a much different end. Number 4. Lockheed C130 Hercules. On July 4, 2021, a Lockheed C130 Hercules took off from the Philippine city of Cagayan de Oro with 104 members of the country's Air Force and 5 military vehicles on board. After overshooting the runway at Jolo Airport in the province of Sulu, the plane crashed into a wooded area nearby, killing 46 of the plane's occupants and 3 civilians on the ground. It was the Philippine Air Force's deadliest aviation accident of all time and the country's worst military air disaster in 30 years. Most of the people on the plane were recent military graduates who were on their way to participate in counterinsurgency operations. Some of them could be seen jumping out of the aircraft before it hit the ground and burst into flames. It's unclear whether the fateful decision spared them from the deadly blaze or cost them their lives. Nearby civilians sprang into action to help with the rescue and recovery effort. Photos of the wreck showed the C-130 in pieces and engulfed in flames as thick black smoke rose above the surrounding coconut palms. An investigation failed to attribute one single factor to the crash. The C-130 was in good condition when it took off that day, and the military ruled out the possibility of an attack being responsible. A report concluded that the accident most likely resulted from human error that may have been influenced by local and environmental conditions. Number 3. Cessna 172. In 2015, a photo of a Cessna 172 plane was featured in a news article about a crashed plane that was found in western Romania with no pilot in sight. The bizarre incident happened in Vaslui County. It's unclear whether the pilot was ever found. But the photo that appeared in the piece was actually from a crash that happened in Watertown, Connecticut in 2014. The pilot, 54-year-old Daniel Kropas, survived without any major injuries, and unlike in the incident in Romania, he was found at the scene. He was flying from Danbury to Plymouth, Connecticut, when he lost control of the single-engine aircraft and crashed in a wooded section of someone's backyard, narrowly missing some power lines during his unplanned descent to the ground. And while the pilot was extremely lucky to walk away from the wreck practically unharmed, the plane sustained some serious damage after landing nose first among the thicket of trees. At the time the story broke, the Federal Aviation Administration was investigating the incident. Local resident John Moskalik, who witnessed the crash, told NBC Connecticut that Kropas appeared distressed after weaving in and out of the power lines. It's understandable considering how much different and deadlier the outcome would have been if he had struck the cables. Number 2. Lockheed P38 Lightning. While flying over a forest near Waldeck, Austria on July 8, 1944, 23-year-old Second Lieutenant Henry Donald Mitchell vanished along with the P-38 aircraft he was piloting, leaving his family to wonder for years what had happened to him. The crash site was discovered on private property in 2017, but the landowner refused to allow authorities to excavate, and the investigation was put on hold. American and Austrian diplomats worked together in an effort to resolve the dispute with the landowner, but they failed to gain access to the site until the man passed away and left his property to his son, who was more open-minded to the excavation. Finally, in 2021, the U.S. POW MIA Department got a chance to investigate the wreck. They confirmed the plane's identity and found human remains which they believe belonged to Donald Mitchell. The agency sent Mitchell's brother Bob an email to inform him of the discovery while they waited for the bones to be identified. A forensic anthropologist confirmed that the remains belonged to Donald Mitchell, finally bringing his family's decades-long search to an end. For a long time, Bob didn't believe that Donald went down with the plane, especially since the pilot's fellow soldiers didn't see the crash. It left Bob wondering if Donald had somehow survived and perhaps been taken as a prisoner of war. Now that his brother's remains have been found, he no longer has to live without answers. And at number 1, B24 Liberator Beautiful Betsy. Also known as the Model 32, the consolidated B24 Liberator is an American heavy bomber that was used extensively throughout World War II. In fact, it's the most produced heavy bomber and multi-engine aircraft of all time. Consequently, there are also many B-24 wrecks throughout the world. One unfortunate crash happened as World War II entered its final months in early 1945, when a B-24 Liberator nicknamed Beautiful Betsy disappeared over Australia while flying from Darwin to Brisbane. 6 military members and 2 British soldiers vanished along with it. After being damaged during previous bombing missions, the plane was slated for retirement. In the meantime, it was only being used for short flights. Numerous expeditions failed to find the missing aircraft. Its fate remained a mystery until 49 years later, in 1994, when a park ranger discovered the wreck while surveying wildfire damage in Crumbit Tops National Park. The recent blaze had cleared overgrowth, exposing enough of the plane for the ranger to see it glistening in the sun. Specialists from the U.S. Army investigated the site and collected human remains. The wreck was then opened to the public and remains in place today, serving as an ever-present reminder of a once-forgotten tragedy. Thanks for watching. Which of these planes that were found surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one.